All right, we're recording. Welcome, Tanvi. To the 36 subscribers of Dot on Target. Can you just give a quick 30
Hi,
second?
hi everybody. Hi,
Can you
uh,
just give a quick 30-second elevator pitch? Who are you?
I am Tanvi. I have known Shubhankar for I think 5 years now. I am currently working in a startup as a strategy lead, and we're glad to be here. And I think congratulations. This is 36, so this is actually it's a big number that you've already gotten to.
Thanks. I started this joke with 23 subscribers. That hey, to the 23 subscribers, can you please give a quick intro who you are? And then I think people felt guilted into increasing that number. So every episode, one subscriber gets added.
Yeah, so at least 36 now.
At least 36 now.
Hi, 36 subscribers, including me.
30, are you subscribed?
I am.
Oh, okay. That's great. Uh, how do we know each other? We know each other from Bain, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
we used to sit next to each other. We
yeah,
we had desks next to each other for close to 1.5 years, and then we exited Bain at around the same time.
yes.
And I think that's when you, I, and two other close friends of ours, we became such a tight group. I still think of you as one of my best friends from India, till date. Uh,
Absolutely.
I
Same
I
here.
think I think the best ROI I had from Bain was you guys, to be honest. But I don't.
You will not believe it. I said the same thing to the two other guys in that group
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. But yes.
All right. I mean, I really think that it's so funny how everybody's career trajectories have gone in such different directions and it's such great. You couldn't have thought that everybody would be on such a nice sort of upward path.
Yeah.
Like one of them has gone on to do great things in VC, and now he's doing his MBA. And
Hmm.
you've had such a great career path in a startup. You actually broke a lot of my sort of conceptions around what a startup career could look like. So do you want to talk about how that came about? What was
Yeah.
your journey in Bain, and then how you came about moving to a startup?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think Bain sort of happened not really by choice. It happened just because it was the first company on campus. We got placed, we got in. Consulting was this, it thing to do at that point of time. And it seemed like a very, very good start. And in hindsight, it was a very good start because it gave us skills, some hard skills that we were able to develop in a short span of time that were again transferable across industries. Also, it was a very good atmosphere because it was like 50 people joining, fresh out of college. And that sort of built a community as well, which is based on absolutely no agenda other than just learning and having fun. And at the same time, but I think within a couple of months, at least for me, that realization hit that this is not something that I'm comfortable pursuing for the foreseeable future in my life. And that's when I decided that is something that I have to sort of do to get out of this field, but also find something that I would like. Now, that was a very confusing path for me because at that point of time, I was also considering an MBA. I was also considering going to into VC, in fact. But after like just reading more about it, talking to more people, even like just doing some conversations with industry folks, I realized that again that structured MNC path wasn't for me. And in fact, I would credit one team manager at Bain for really sort of showing me, where to go next. So at that point of time, he had said that his wife is actually an IM and an IMA grad and had gone to one of the management trainee programs. And he said, just talk to her. And like, if you still think that this is something that you want to do, because at this point of time you want to explore, just still think if that's a right career path, then take it. But in
Hmm.
my view, you should go to an unstructured environment and try and structure things. Like
Right.
and for that to happen, it was the idea was that an unstructured environment can only be provided in a startup.
Hmm.
Startups are obviously of different kinds. which we can go into later. But the idea was that that is where the most of the learning will happen, is what he had said. And I mean, I think that those words I took to heart, that like, this is the time where I have to sort of go out there and try and make it try and give myself the best shot to learn as much as possible, because I wasn't sure of what I want to do.
Hmm.
So that's how I decided to quit Bain. And that's also how I decided that I want to go into a startup. So, and how that journey came about is that, I mean, I decided, I took a clean break. I did not have anything in hand, to be very honest, when I had quit Bain, which is not the most recommended way to do it. It's just
Yeah.
something that I did because, I mean, I sort of work that way, that you have to like get a clean exit before I can think about something else.
Yeah.
So, so that's the path that I took. And after that, it was just a little bit of researching. And I will be honest that I was fairly lucky that I was able to land something quickly, which stuck around. Like, I've been at my current place for 5 years,
Hmm.
for 4 years rather. And uh, and I was lucky enough to be able to get that quickly without too much looking around.
Yeah.
And uh, but that is something that, I mean, I would say is not a very it's not something that will happen for everybody,
Hmm.
right? So because there is, like, I mean, you can end up picking wrong companies as well. You can end up picking the wrong team as well.
Yeah.
But I was lucky that way. So yeah, that's when it happened.
So you mentioned that you started sometime after you joined Bain, you started looking for alternatives. Maybe you considered education, you considered another company. Around what time did you actually start thinking that I think this is not the right place for me?
I think it was around the 6 month mark.
Hmm.
But then again, I was fairly lucky at Bain as well, because around that time only, a new practice was being set up.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be a part of that setup, which made my work again very interesting for the next 6 7 months.
Yeah.
But but after that setup had been done, it again became a repeatable exercise and
Hmm.
repetitive exercise.
Hmm.
So it was again becoming fairly stagnated. And I won't say that it was something that wasn't giving incremental learning. It was,
Yeah.
rather, same time, it wasn't something that was giving me like outsized um, skills
Hmm.
for that point of time. And again, I felt that for me, this was the right time to do something that can help me just get better exposure into the world, uh, uh, versus what consulting could provide me.
Okay. And so, what did you have any sort of framework or thoughts around this is the kind of startup that I want to go for once you had decided that that unstructured environment is what you wanted and that you could only get it in a startup?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll actually start with this, that my definition of startup at that point of time was also very murky. Like,
Yeah.
for me, a startup was Flipkart.
Mm.
In 2018, Flipkart was arguably not a startup. I mean, it's not at least
Yeah.
something that it was a very, like, it was a big company. It was structured in its workings, so it
Yeah.
wasn't really a startup, right?
Yeah.
So that was another myth that honestly got busted when I ended up speaking with people.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I would say that my framework got evolved with the process that I took. First was understanding what a startup is,
Yeah.
and realizing that uh, probably a startup that has raised a couple of rounds versus a startup that has raised, let's say, a series E or series D or series E.
Mm.
There's a huge difference between those couple of rounds,
Mm.
and how structured the company will be, or how structured you can expect the company to be.
Yeah.
And and like consequently also how big the team size will be, what kind of an impactful role will you get. All of that sort of is dependent on where the company is in its life cycle, right?
Right.
All of this obviously I can say with hindsight. So I mean, I can explain this in a way that the time I had joined the company that I'm working at was series after series B,
Okay.
and it was about 30-35 member corporate team.
Right.
So fairly small team. Lots of opportunities to get involved in different functions, different areas,
Hmm.
and and I think that was something that made all the difference, because if I had joined something that was already at a stage where I couldn't work in different functions or work with the different functions in a very on the ground, on a very on the ground level, it would have been different in terms of learning, as well as getting those day-to-day skills, and like really getting the nitty-gritties of working on the job. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And so it was basically a company where you could work cross-functionally. That was sort of the
Yes.
only metric you had going in.
Yes, that was so. I'll be like, I mean, I think at that point of time, my metric was to work as closely with the founder as possible.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
I were to break it down, it was one, it has to be a startup that is not very big.
Hmm.
Second, the role has to be something that that works closely with the founder or the founding team,
Right.
so to speak, because that sort of takes you that exposes you to the strategic outlook of what the company is actually looking to be into. You're
Yeah.
exposed to the vision, and obviously, one thing that is very important when you pick this kind of a start, the kind of startup that you want to work for, is if your vision is aligned with the founder. That is like, I mean, I feel that's critically important, because
Hmm.
if you want to be an impactful role and you don't really believe in the vision, then it's not something that you can put your 100% effort into, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that I feel I was very lucky to find again, in the first go itself. So like those are, I mean, I think two three things that that helped me,
Right.
that and in hindsight, I would say one of the most important things before you join any startup or any even mid-sized company, I would say at this point, is who are you reporting to, you know, and
Yeah.
what is that vision like. And
Hmm.
it can be a growth officer for a company in a startup, but
Right.
is that like, what is that growth officer thinking, what's their vision? It can be the founder itself, it can be some other function as well.
Right.
But the idea is that a lot of what you end up doing will depend on what their idea of success is like.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that alignment is very necessary,
Hmm.
and obviously it doesn't mean that you have to agree on everything. It just
Yeah.
means that broadly you agree on the fundamentals.
Yeah. That's a nice way of just like having an idea of what your boss's idea of success is.
Yeah,
If you don't have that, if you could be maybe motoring on in a completely different direction, right?
yeah,
Than what they expect of you.
correct.
How did you optimize for, like, did you ask those questions when you were being interviewed for that particular startup? Did you try and figure out what the founder's vision was, or what your reporting manager would look like, what their ideals would be like?
Yeah,
Did you try
yeah.
and go
I
into
so
that?
I actually did, and I had a friend of a friend who was already working in this particular company.
Yeah.
So I did like, I mean, uh, I did speak with him for a little bit to understand, what the company is about, and it's a fairly well documented company. So I was able to find most of the answers to my questions through articles only, and then obviously with the founder also very forthcoming, and we were able to align on the essentials at least.
All right. All right. I think that's a lot of due diligence for somebody who's not worked in a startup before, because I really didn't have that much, though, that detailed framework when I was leaving Bain. I just said, this is like, there's this startup that I worked at when I was in undergrad. I really liked it. And I said, I want to feel that way again. So why don't I leave Bain and work in that company? That
Hmm.
was pretty much all my thinking was like.
Interesting, interesting. During
Yeah.
that time, did you ever think that you want to switch paths again before coming here?
When I was in the startup,
Hmm.
no, I loved it. It
Hmm.
was a very painful time professionally because I was learning so much and I was making so many mistakes on an everyday basis. I just felt horrible
Okay.
for most of the time. It was like going to a mental commando course, to be honest.
Okay.
That's the only way I can put it because I had a very, 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 very hard taskmaster for a boss.
Okay.
And he just expected so much from me from the first day itself that I would just wake up every single day feeling horrible. That's why I never got up early those 4 years. Because I would get up and then I would feel like crap. I would just turn back and I would go to bed and I'd be like, yeah, let me sleep it off. Because the last night I would have made some huge mistake that he had made me feel so horrible about that I just won't know how to get up in the morning. But then, the only thing I would tell myself is, yeah, let's just get through this next day. Let's just get through this next day and see how it goes. And then eventually I started doing well. And then that's when I started seeing like, oh, the immense sort of pressure cooker environment. It's just so that you progress that much faster over time. And so I felt like those 4 years, they condensed like maybe 15 years or 20 years worth of experience into those 4 years. So I really enjoyed every single moment. In hindsight, when I was going through it, not so nice, not so pleasurable.
It's such a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think you went through that in a
Yeah.
sort of similar way when I remember because we were desk mates, we used to sit right
Mm-hmm.
next to each other. That 6 month mark where you started thinking about leaving, I think a lot of us started having those thoughts. But then I remember that you went into this setting up this new practice that really interested you, but also at first you didn't really enjoy working with your boss because I remember you saying that he creates this intense pressure cooker type environments that I really
Yeah.
don't enjoy. He pressurizes us to do something a couple of hours earlier than we would have done usually, and it's so exhausting. But once you were out of that project, I remember you having nothing but good things to say about that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will. I mean, again, as I said, in hindsight is a beautiful thing. But I mean, I think it's that journey that everybody as a professional has to take, and especially as professionals who are just starting out. That I mean, we don't really understand the workings of the real world till you are in the real world, and
Mm.
I think that was just that 3 4 month period was that wake up call that this is how the real world works, and you need to figure out a way to deal with it, and on your own terms. It doesn't have to be. It's not a one size fit all approach. On your own terms, you need to figure out how to deal with pressure, and I mean, like you did not wake up early so that you don't have to face the reality head on. But
Yeah,
I mean, and I think my way of dealing with it was like just, I think, going back home and shutting it off for a while. And then I think it just became better because like as you start working, I think if you start working with somebody closely, you end up realizing where that is coming from versus like it's not the person's intention to create pressure. It's just that the situation is such, right? So I think
yeah,
that context is something that if it's there, then it's much easier to accept and adapt, is what I would say.
I agree. Do you think that, and of course, the startup that you went to, I know you've worked in a very, very intense environment after that initial experience at Bain as well. So do you think it has become a part of you, just that intensity?
I would say yes and no. Yes, it was a part of me, but no, I think I've just gotten a lot better at dealing with it and shutting off when I'm not at work. So
Hmm.
that has been a learning of past 1.5 years only. It's
Yeah.
new for me as well, but I would say that I think I've just gotten a lot better at doing that.
Hmm. All right. Yeah. The thing that I struggle with now is that having been through a really, really, really intense period of my life, like we were talking before we started recording, that I'm doing a couple of projects, and you remarked that, like, how are you doing so many? The thing I'm realizing about myself is that now that the intensity has fallen away externally, I need to build stuff up around me that sort of simulates that. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm
You're
not
running away
living
time.
life purposefully enough. So,
Yes.
and it's not, being like a worker bee. Like, it's not doing manual work. I love doing creative work. And so I'm spinning up different projects, trying to figure out what works, learning new stuff. But that 4-year period for me was so transformational that it just turned the temperature setting of my oven a little bit to extreme. And
At the
so,
base level, yeah. At the
yeah,
base
so
level, that's your structure now.
yeah, because earlier I felt like it was pretty average, like the normal, like everyday human beings. But
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like my sort of the oven burns a bit hotter. And so, frankly, it's a bit tougher to work with people now, because I'll be doing a college project in a group, and then everybody's like, yeah, so let's space it out. Let's work on this over the next week. I'm like, you could do this in 30 minutes today. Let's figure out a time. Let's figure it out today. And then, relax for the rest of the week if you want to. Nobody really likes that attitude.
I think, I mean, it's a balance. I would agree. And I don't know if people who work with me will agree that I have found that balance. But I think it is a balance that sort of needs to be figured out. And I think one of the things about working in teams is also this, that and especially now that I'm also leading a team, it also becomes important to sort of see, where you can balance each other out. It's not even just
Yeah.
like, your need to constantly perform. It's also that you have to build other people up,
Yeah.
right? And you have to work with their needs. So I mean, I would say that what you're feeling is 100% natural because you've been to that 4-year journey. But at the same time, do you want this to be your new normal or not, is something you'll have to answer for yourself.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
yeah.
I just working with teams is so, I mean, I would say that you have more experience doing that, and doing that well, than I do. That's something I'm actually looking to learn even more, because like we were a small company. So, it was more, and everybody had the same mindset. And so
Hmm.
working in that environment is so easy versus, stitching together a team, or, a company that is growing relatively
Yeah.
fast. So you're getting more and more people in your company. So why don't you
Hmm.
just walk us through how it was? How did you find this company? Was it through your network? Was it through
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, so it was through my network only. As I said, a friend of a friend was working there. I
Right.
knew the company because it was founded by a college
Hmm.
alum, and so that's why I knew of the company. But then at the same time, spoke with the mutual friend and tried to learn as much as about it as possible. And
Yeah.
I'll be very honest, I did not shop around too much. Like, I did not interview at a lot of places. This was,
Hmm.
I think, the second place I interviewed that I got into, and
Right.
it seemed like the right fit, so I just said, let's go for it. There's no harm in not trying this for some time. I will clarify, I did have an MBA admit that I had deferred before, so I had that as a backup.
Right.
So I was like, it's fine, like even if it doesn't work out, I can always go do an MBA. So that was my backup plan.
I remember now. You were going to go to ISB, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Ah, yeah. That so wasn't the right path for you.
yeah.
Yeah. But
I
I,
would
I would,
agree.
I think you would just walk on campus day one, intimidate everybody else, and just be like, everybody else would be like, yeah, that's the class topper. That's the
Honestly, I
who's getting
don't think
placed
I'll
on
be a
day one,
good.
first company. Yeah, that's Tanvi, probably.
But I mean, I don't think I would have been a very good fit at an MBA college. I'll be very honest. And
Yeah, I agree.
especially, I've been speaking with, our friends from Bain who are in the US,
Yeah,
uh, who are doing their MBAs, and I think people who know me well have also indicated the same thing, that all of this is fine. It's all like, it's a great experience and everything, but not sure if it's the right experience or would have been a right experience for you.
yeah,
And I mean, just also hearing about their lives, I I genuinely think it would not have been.
Mm-hmm.
So
What part
I
of
think,
their lives puts you off?
I mean, I just think that there's a lot of pressure to be very socially active.
Mm.
And I mean, one of the people also said that throughout their lives they considered themselves an extrovert, but when they went there, they realized that they are not, because it was that intensity of socializing, right? And
Yeah.
and that is just something that stuck with me. That, I mean, I know I'm an introvert, so definitely would not have survived, and
Yeah.
definitely could not have made the most of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I mean, I take time to adjust to situations, and I think in an MBA college, which is definitely multicultural, and especially if you're doing it from abroad, you have a few months at best to make a good impression, to form your group of friends, and I just think that's too much pressure. So
Yeah.
glad that I did not end up taking that path.
I also think that's very uh, maybe localized to the experience of someone who's going to North America for the first time,
Fair enough.
because
Hmm.
I find the environment here much more relaxed.
Got it.
And I didn't feel that there's a lot of pressure to socialize, to be very honest. And it was nice. It was pretty easy and relaxed to mingle with everybody else.
That's good. That's good. I'm
Yeah.
glad that was your journey. I'm really glad.
Yeah, because I'm like you. I'm a high functioning introvert, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
But people just don't believe it. People think that you're extroverted over here, but I'm really not. And I would not thrive in those areas where everybody is, yapping away in your ear all day long, and you're expected to be one of them.
Yeah.
Hmm. So just walk us through your journey. How was it when you started working? Like, what kind of work did you do?
Yeah.
And sort of, how was it over the last 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started as an analyst in the company, and I was working again with the founder. So was working with on a multiple projects as in when they came, and like, I mean, that would include logistics optimization project. That would include uh, taking care of taxation or some legacy issues, taking care of the monthly reports that sort of need to go out in a more optimized way, things like that. Started with that, but then as I started deep diving into different facets of the company, then I realized that there's opportunity to be had. So again, was given complete freedom to sort of see those opportunities through. That was, I think, that made all the difference, and I got exposed to multiple functions. So I
Mm,
went deep into supply chain, went deep into operations,
mm,
and went deep into finance as well. Understood how global businesses work, how how an entity can be set up in the US from India with zero presence in the US,
mm.
physical presence in the US. How you can, I mean, e-commerce, I would say, is like a wonderful thing because it does give you all those opportunities. And, right from here, we've been able to run a global business. And it's also exposed us to a lot of different nitty-gritties of how business happens in different geographies,
Mm.
and includes all facets of business, right? It includes right from the operational issues, the regulatory environment, and also includes how do you market to that country,
Yeah,
how do you interpret the data to sort of market better and keep optimizing as you go forward.
yeah,
Take all of that and do it multiple times over because you're growing at such a fast pace. So that's been the journey basically, sort of. And I think that's the beauty of, again, being in a startup, because you can never be complacent. Like, even now, I can never be complacent because I know that there's so much to do, there's so much to optimize. And
yeah,
if I want my place to be there, then I have to continuously perform, right?
yeah,
It's not something that you can, like, sort of, you can't you can only live off your past laurels for so long.
yeah.
So
You have to own your
that's
game every single day.
yeah, exactly. Like, just show up every single day, perform every single day. And I
Yeah,
think that is what sort of also separates like separates your growth journey, and like
Yeah.
sort of you can grow in an outsized way if you have that attitude, which I think, I mean, a lot of people in our circle do have. So that is something that I feel is definitely something that is positive, again depending on whichever path whoever chooses, and can be
Hmm.
successful in their own way.
Yeah, that's true. Did you find it tough to transition from having worked in Bain to going to a startup environment?
Not really. I mean, I do come from a family that's always been involved in business.
Yeah.
So I've been exposed to, I mean, at least those talks, not like physically been to office or anything, but just those talks of how the environment needs to be. At the same time, obviously, it was a traditional business. So a traditional business uh, by the family plus an MNC culture sort of was the perfect mix to prepare me for what was coming, which was a startup that's going to scale.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that there are differences. So a company that is at series A or B might be a great fit for somebody who's looking to be like you, work with the founder, work with the founding team. At what stage do you think that line starts to get blurred? The team size starts to get a little too big. Is it series D, E?
Hmm. I mean, I would say Series C, Series D sort of starts showing that sign. I mean, that's just been my general experience in the companies that I've in my field.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it also depends on industry.
Yeah.
Like for example, that actually might start to happen even from Series B if the team size has grown a lot.
Yeah.
So I would say like uh, a good team size to be will be 30-35 people
Right.
is how it put it.
Okay. Okay. And what what would you say? So, like right now, I am starting that journey of working in a startup or working in a scale up um, proper over here in the UK. So I've been applying to. I made a list of about 70 startups and segregated them from seed stage to even Series F. So I said, let me cover the entire spectrum and see, what are the
Hmm.
patterns I see. And I realized that there aren't a lot of patterns. I mean, I saw Series B companies having 1,000 employees, close to that. I saw Series C companies having just about 100, 200 employees. So I
Hmm.
realized there's no sort of function of employee count. It just depends so much on industry. It just depends so much on the business context.
Agreed. That makes sense. And like I mean, I think also uh, the larger the workforce doesn't necessarily mean that it's still not the right fit, because depending on the function of most of the workforce, like what are they involved in, is what will separate. Like for example, I mean, most people outsource like a lot of companies outsource their sales office, right? But if that's something that is the field sales associates, if that is something that's part of the company itself, then that is something that you can separate out. If the company is also into manufacturing,
Yeah,
then obviously there will be a manufacturing setup that needs to be fully staffed on day one, like a
yeah,
minimum setup that has to be fully staffed on day one. So you can separate that out from you can exclude that from the employee count. I would say the idea is that the core team that's building it, if it's less than 30-35 people, there is still a lot of learning. Even if it's 100 people, even if the core team is 100 people, there's still a lot of learning within your own functions, within the function that you want to develop into.
yeah,
And a lot of companies nowadays are promoting cross functional cross functional transition as well,
yeah,
which I think is a very positive sign, because like even if you've become 150 member, 200 member corporate team, if you still have opportunities to go across in a structured way, even that's great opportunity.
all right.
Obviously it's also about like what's your risk taking ability at that point of time,
Hmm.
and like I mean, how much are you willing to sort of treat it as an experiment. So,
Right. Yeah,
and I think those factors sort of go into, I would say, deciding what's the right fit for you.
yeah, yeah. I agree. What you've hired a lot of people, right? And you've hired people that are like that have been in the industry for way more years than
Yeah,
you. How was
yeah.
that experience?
It's been a very interesting experience. I'll be very honest that it was a very daunting task because
Yeah.
interviewing somebody who has more experience than you is a little bit outside anybody's comfort zone. But I think I took it again as a learning opportunity. Those conversations were more like, oh, okay, so you've done all of this. Let's break it down how you've done it, so that I can take it as a learning opportunity. And if
Mm.
it's making sense, let's further discuss it. So that would be my uh,
What sort of
comment.
um what do you have any sort of stories around like interesting conversations you had in this regard with somebody who maybe thought, oh, why am I being interviewed by a child again? Did you
I
get
think
that
I
reaction
think
ever?
I think I've been fortunate enough that at least people have not said that to me to my face.
All right.
But but uh, but there was this one person who I'm still in touch with that person. Very good. Not working currently for us, but
Yeah.
but but like during when he was exiting, he did say that I've never had a lady boss that is as young as you, also has no clue, like has not been in the industry, but it's been a pleasure working with you. So I'll take that as a very positive sort of outro, right? But that was interesting, and I was like, okay. I'm sure that people think that, but obviously nobody can say it. Hopefully, to my face.
Have you had, hey, why don't I ask you for advice? I'm interviewing with a Series D startup for a sales role.
Hmm.
And what do you think? Like, do you have any advice for me? How should I interview with them? I'm interviewing with somebody who I know is like working in their talent acquisition team.
Hmm.
Um, and I think she is been in the company for a while now, but I think that's just the first stage
Got it.
of
Yeah,
recruitment. Um,
makes sense.
what advice would you give me?
I think again, focus on projects that you've seen through, right? Because I think people are really easy to read into if you go into the details of the projects,
Yeah,
right? And it's easier to do it at this scale where you are the executioner. If I feel like if you're interviewing a manager, then it ends up becoming okay. You don't really know what part they played in that project versus
yeah,
you have that advantage because you've executed things end to end, right?
yeah,
So I feel that if you play to your strengths and if you are able to sort of show the value add that you were able to bring on high impact projects,
yeah,
right? That would uh, translate into something positive because that shows a good attitude, that shows initiative, which are, in my view, two things that most people are actually looking for.
yeah,
Skills are obvious, competency and skills are obviously important, and that will really be judged on how an interviewer approaches it. It can be through any test, through puzzles, through just again going deeper into your work, can be through anything. But what really needs to shine through in an interview is that one, you take initiative, two, you have a good attitude, three, you can work with teams.
mm,
Now, that being a team player is very important because
yeah,
again, it's the company's already set up, right? I mean, they're looking for somebody to fill in
yeah, yeah,
one of the parts. It's not something that is being turned from scratch. So it's
yeah,
important that that you're able to also express that you've been a team player. So
yeah.
yeah,
All
those
right,
three.
all right. I'll keep those in mind. I'll let you know how it goes.
I hope my advice is steering in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've been there. I mean, I take your advice in a very responsible way because you've been there, you've been hiring people, you've been in a startup that's been scaling very, very fast. So you've been on the other end of the things. Um, what what's the best, what's the most, how stressful has the last 4 years been? Let's put it that way.
Mm, it's been a roller coaster ride. Like it's had its ups and downs. I would say. At the most stressful, it was it was, I mean, it was at that stage where genuinely you'd be like, okay, there's just work going on and on and on and on, and there's no off switch.
Yeah.
uh, and that ends up obviously taking a toll on you as well. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I think uh, because of COVID, and there was this time where for 16 months we were working out of our homes instead of office, right? I would say that was the most stressful time, because it's like, as I mentioned, that we were a very small team, right? I mean, we weren't a lot of people, so it was easy to interact, coordinate, work with everybody, read everybody's body language when you're physically there in office, right? But we grew as a team during that COVID time, right?
Mm.
So it was really hard to connect to people as well beyond the work, right? So I would say that ended up adding to stress,
Yeah.
because it's something that you have to, I mean, you have to do your work obviously, but at the same time you want to work in an environment that's friendly. It's
Yeah.
not something that it's not transactional.
Yeah.
But how do you build a friendly environment if you've not met the person, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I would say that was like, apart from the work itself, that was sort of adding to the stress levels. But it's been way better since we've gone back to offices. And I mean, I travel every day 3 hours, but I don't complain about that, because it's still better to go to work versus work from home.
You travel. I still can't understand why you travel that much. You go from Gurgaon to Noida, which
Yes,
is what, 1.5 hours each way, right?
yes, yes, yes.
And you've been doing that for how long now?
It's been 1.5 years now. Yeah.
And before that, how did you have a lot of travel?
I did. So even before that, I used to travel by metro before that, and I used to take about the same time, about an hour. And then at Bain also, I was traveling obviously from Delhi to Gurgaon, and that was also taking time. But I think I've always commuted my entire life. My school was a minimum 1 hour away. My college was 1 hour away. My first job was 1 hour away. The second office was 1 hour away. So I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you are okay with it, but I'm saying just try for a month living close to your office. It's such a different level of, like, just think about it. 3 hours every single day for the last 1.5 years you put into your commute. It's when I moved closer to my work, I used to bike to work every single day. It would be a
Hmm.
15-minute bike ride. And it was the best thing after Bain, because I used to spend around an hour and a half every single day traveling up and down to office. And it was cut
Hmm.
down to 15 minutes each way. And I was cycling in Delhi, which was so
Wow.
nice. And
Yeah.
I could, I mean, it was such a different sort of lifestyle. It just helped me so much mentally,
Hmm.
frees up so much time, right?
No, I agree. I've thought about it, I'll be very honest. But I have my own reasons to stay with family. I have a young niece that is perfect stress buster. Come home, play with her, and everything's fine. So
Yeah.
I mean, I just have like too many other motivations to not move closer to work.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. She is pretty cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also a nice sort of thing to say to her when she grows up. I sacrificed 3 hours of my life
Yeah.
every single day just so
Yeah.
I could see you. So yeah.
And I don't see her most days, because by the time I'm going, she's still sleeping. By the time I come back, she's slept. So,
Oh,
but I do see her at least twice or thrice a week, so it's fine.
all right, all right. How has tell us about. I think this will be the most interesting bit. But tell us about what sort of your equity structure looks like. How do you make money? Because I know that you've had some great, like we were talking earlier, some outsized financial returns from working in this company. It's been extremely stressful. You've learned a lot, but you've also earned a lot as well. And it broke my frame about startups, to be very honest, that somebody as young as you and I, if they pick the right kind of company to work for, and sort of course they have to earn their keep every single day, but if they're strategic about the kind of company they work for, they can get some great financial results as well. So
Yeah.
Like, explain it to me like I'm 5 or I'm a complete beginner. How do you pick these sort of companies?
Got it. Got it. So I think, as I mentioned, that two things that are very important when you're picking a company is one, that you're aligned to the vision of the company, right? That is one. And second is that you're getting in at the right time. And that right time again can be different for different people. At that point of time, I was only 15 months into my professional journey. I was ready to take a lot of risks, right?
Yeah.
So at that point of time, it made sense to me that let's go in for an opportunity which may or may not yield into anything, but at the same time, it does have the potential to be one great learning experience. Again, I had gone in with that mentality. At that point of time, even I was not aware of any other way to sort of make money in your professional life. But what I realized is that when you get into a startup, and if you at whatever stage, again, this can be at any stage, because
Yeah.
there are now the ecosystem has evolved so much that there are the stock options are there for people to cash into at different stages in life cycle. Like, even Google has RSUs, right? I mean, it's not about being like very small and like taking those very big risks uh, that are necessary to take.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll just explain it in two ways. That one, your sort of compensation is two part. One is your salary, which again can be structured in different ways. There's obviously incentives and variable bonus, etc. But and there's some fixed part of it. The second part of it is stock options, which are earned out over your stint in a company, and so and these stock options are sort of um, given based on two things. One, obviously, is what your background is, where you're coming from, how much you want at the time of joining.
Hmm.
But that is where I think that you shouldn't restrict yourself to just think about what that opportunity looks like at the time of joining. If
Hmm.
you perform, there is possibility to get a, a bigger piece of action, right?
Right.
And that is, I think, those are the kind of companies that you need to go for, where you are aligned with your boss,
Hmm.
right? That, okay, you're starting out this way, but if things go well, there's opportunity for you to grow,
Hmm.
right? Both in terms of like having a more rewarding professional path, but at the
Yeah.
same time having a more rewarding financial structure as well.
Right.
So that's how I would say it. That it's there's two components to it. Obviously, your fixed salary is important for your day-to-day sustenance,
Yeah.
but uh, that is something that is sort of linear in growth.
Yeah.
It is only exponential for that 0.1% people that,
Yeah.
I mean, at least I am not a part of. So it's something that I feel that if you're looking for an outsized growth, then just relying on your salary alone is probably uh, wishful thinking at some level,
Yeah.
because that is something that may or may not increase exponentially.
Yeah.
Uh, if you are looking to get yourself rewarded from work, then stock options is a good idea. If
Yeah.
you are looking to make your money elsewhere, then alternate investments are also a good idea. And that, I feel, obviously is something that I mean, a lot of people in our circles have taken that path, where
Hmm.
where they have very active equity portfolios, they have very active crypto portfolios for that matter,
Yeah.
who have been able to sort of generate their
Do they
income
still have
elsewhere.
active crypto portfolios?
I don't. I don't.
Yeah. I know you. Did you do any trading at all in the last couple of years?
The last trading I did was at Bain 2017 when
Same
it was
here.
all the rage. Yes.
Same here. I put in 3,000 rupees, and that converted into 24,000 rupees by 2021. That's when the government guy came out and said that, yeah, we're going to ban it. That's when I exited from that portfolio. But
Yeah, yeah,
pretty, I mean, everybody thinks that way. What if I'd put in a lakh? It'd be 8 times that. What if I'd put in 8 lakhs? So,
I think I saw this podcast recently that said that there should be a ban on calculators that let you go beyond 12% rate of interest, or rate of return rather,
yeah,
year on year, because then you get into the cycle of thinking, oh, what if I only get 50, what if I get 15% return, then I can double my money in X many number
yeah,
of years.
yeah,
If it's 18%, then these many years get reduced, right? So I feel it's just that wishful thinking, that cycle you get into. But
yeah, that's
yeah,
true. That's true. Anyway, you were saying, you were talking about,
yeah.
cycle of equity.
Yeah. And obviously, like, this comes with a lot of caveats that you have to be lucky enough in your choice of company, which
Mhm.
I mean, which is something that I feel is uh, as a matter of it's a matter of luck a lot more than you would care to admit,
Okay.
because you don't know how the economy is going to be, how the ecosystem is going to be, if really you'll get the exit that you want. And it's still at that stage for me. I don't know if I'll get the exit that I want,
Yeah,
because it's just dependent on too many external factors as well.
yeah,
It's dependent on the life cycle of the company, and it's dependent on your financial needs at
right.
that point of time, right? And I think that is one thing that I would say is very difficult to balance out if you don't come from a background where you're privileged enough to not worry about finances at
Yeah,
that point of time, right? And I'm fortunate enough to be one such person where I don't have to care about my uh, like financial return today, right? Even I obviously want to be I am financially independent and I want to continue to be that, but
yeah,
I don't have any obligations as such that force me to be financially independent,
yeah,
right? So and as I said, again, at that point of time in my life, and even today, I can take those risks because of the situation that I'm in, right? And so if you can balance out the risks that you can take, are willing to take, then this is a very good opportunity. Obviously, working for a company that also rewards you from a salary perspective, on a fixed income side, that is that's the ideal combo, that you have that plus you have an outsized opportunity, and
yeah.
then you don't have to worry about your day-to-day finances, but at the same time you know that there's something of a potential to go bigger.
Now
And
that now that you have spent so many years in the startup ecosystem, if you had to advise somebody who's just starting out, what exactly is it, that you look for when you're picking a company? Frameworks that you've developed over the last 4 years could be, do you look at a company's funding? Do you look at its last round? Do you look at, what the valuation is like? Do you look at what the leadership is like? And stuff like that. That's a bit more,
fair
that
enough.
gives you a
Yeah.
bit more clearer idea of whether this company is likely to be rewarding for you financially as well as skill wise in the long term.
I think I'll look at two things. I'll see who is backing the company more than how much funding they've raised.
All right.
Like if it's an investor that is known to pick certain niches and stick to that, and then they've picked that company in that specific niche, it's it's a good sign. And obviously it's a bet that they've taken, but at the same time it's a bet that I will be more comfortable taking if I know that an investor in the same niche, who specializes in that niche, is invested in that company. That would be one. And second would be the leadership. I think that is the most important and the most critical thing in picking the company that you want to work for, is if the leadership has the vision, and at the same time it's very difficult to judge on executional capacities at the time of when you are interviewing, but I think now there are some tools that also help you do that. Like, you can look for whether is it a you can look up great places to work for, you can look for employee reviews, you can look for
Yeah.
external sources of validation
Yeah.
at the time of your due diligence. But uh, two of the most critical things for me, if you're looking at it as a financial opportunity, will be these two only, like who's put in the money and
What's the leadership like?
and what's the leadership like. And I mean, of course, if you are privy to information, financial information, that's great. But I mean, mostly you'll not be.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get that kind of information, and not necessary as well. I
Yeah.
would say.
Got it. You mentioned RSUs. I frankly have no idea what that means. Can you break down like what does stock options look like? How do they vest? What is a cliff period? So like basics of, how are you rewarded in terms of equity at a startup or even
Got
a
it, got it,
slightly
got it.
larger company?
Yeah. So again, I will caveat this by saying that I'm not aware of the universe of how these things function.
Yeah.
RSUs are restricted stock units that work very differently in a company like Google or Facebook versus versus ESOPs that are more popular uh, in the more nascent startup ecosystem. Those typically work in a way where you have a vesting period
Yeah.
and then you have an exercise period. Now, how that works? Let's say that you join a company, you get 10 ESOPs, and let's say they are vesting after a 1 year cliff period.
What do ESOP stand for?
Employee stock options.
Right.
What it stands for. And let's say you get those ESOPs, and that basically means that over whatever the vesting period is, they will be made available to you as an option, which you may or may not exercise. That's up to you. And I'll come to how that works as well.
All right.
So like let's say that that you go to a company which has a standard vesting of 4 years, and they give you 25%, 25%, 25%, 25% at the end of each year.
Right.
You've been right with no cliff period, which means that you don't have you start earning that 1 year mark as soon as you start working there.
Right.
So let's say you get 10 ESOPs at the beginning, at the time of your joining, and uh, and then obviously the companies have policy on how to round it up, round it down. For example, let's say if it's 25%, then they'll not give you a fraction of a share. They'll give you a whole number that
Right.
can be either so 2.5 can go to 3 or 2.5 can go to 2, depends on how the company is phrasing their policy. So
Right.
let's say that goes to 3 in the first year, then it goes to 5 in the year after, then it goes to again 8, so 3 more shares get added, 8, and then 4 years you get get 2 more shares, and that's your 10. The cycle of 10 is completed, right?
Right.
Now, at any stage of your vesting, you have option to exercise the option and convert it into an actual share.
Right.
Now the exercise will happen at a certain price. That exercise price is again dependent on company policy, right? It can be the face value. Typically the face value is 5 rupees or 10 rupees, even in the stock market, but it can vary as well. It can either be the face value or it can be a different strike price, right? This is called a strike price, which basically, or exercise price rather,
Right.
where the company can say like, okay, if this, let's say that the share was worth 1,000 rupees in the beginning, then and let's say the face value is 10 rupees, the company says that I'll give it to you for 300 rupees after 1 year.
Right.
So
How do you decide you said there's something called face value, which is generally 5 or 10 rupees. What relevance does it have in all, from what I understand, whenever there's a company that's listed?
It's not very relevant. It's just to sort of it's just to do with structuring it in a way that's compliant with all accounting, because authorized share capital of the company is defined that way through and then depending on what the authorized share capital is, there'll be a number of shares,
Right.
and depending on what the paid up capital is, there'll be a number of shares that are currently active.
Right.
So all of that, like, you don't need to get into the nitty-gritties of it. It's not very relevant to the conversation.
Yeah.
The idea is that you have an exercise price, which can which can be as low as the face value. Let me put it this way, or it can be higher depending on what the company policy is at that point of time.
All right.
And then at that point of time, if you decide that the shares that have been vested, you want to exercise that,
Hmm.
right? Then you pay that amount to the company and you get those shares in your name.
All right.
And then those shares can be liquidated. Again, the liquidation is also governed by company policy to a very large extent,
Right.
because these are not listed entities, right?
Yeah.
So not anybody can just buy and sell these shares. The trading is restricted, right? So there, it's again governed by a lot of policies as to, who can buy it, or what the cycle should look like, who should it go to first, if they reject then who should it go to, if they reject then who should it go to, can you bring in an outside investor, all of those things. So
Right.
it's a very I would say it's a very complicated process that has been structured in the industry enough to know that an exit is not certain,
Yeah.
right? An exit may or may not come, and that's the risk that you're taking with this. But at the same time, the rules of the game are such that you know that there is an opportunity, but that opportunity may or may not come at the time you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's how it works. And I think I was explaining, at the time of vesting, you
Mm.
can decide whether to exercise your share or to buy the share or not, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is also very interesting that whether you want to buy the share or not at that point of time is also a very financial decision,
Right.
because there could be tax liabilities even if you just buy the share and don't sell it at that point of time,
Mm-hmm.
because it ends up being a perquisite, and it gets added to your salary, and then you have to pay tax on it. And there are schemes that are government schemes that defer the tax as well. I am not aware of the particulars, so I can't go into too much details. But it is a financial decision at that point of time as well,
So as
right?
I understand, you
Hmm.
have stock options that vest over a multi-year period. Let's say your first year, you have three stocks allocated to you that you have the option to exercise. That is, you have the option to buy these stocks.
Exactly.
So the value of this stock that you're exercising could be anywhere between the face value and the actual value, let's say
Hmm.
between 5 and 1,000 rupees. And if you do choose to exercise, that is to buy them, the company will give you a price, let's like you said, 300 rupees. And so you pay 300 rupees per share to the
Yes,
company,
perfect.
and
Hmm.
then you get three shares of the company. And then the value may appreciate, depreciate, whatever it is, it becomes a part of your stock portfolio.
Correct. Exactly.
And where does that stock get reflected? Is it like all my stocks are in my ICICI Demat account? So where do your stocks go?
So there are two ways that it can reflect in your portfolio. One is that you have a physical share certificate that shows that you're owner of this share.
Yeah.
The second way could be that if the company has their shares on have had their shares dematted, then
Hmm.
it reflects on your demat account without a value. Like you have the
Right.
quantity and you just have the face value.
All right. So then how do you do they then release, at a quarterly or a yearly basis that, this is what the value of the share is like? How do you have a sense of
It's not public information. It is not.
no, I mean for the employees.
For the employees, you just let go of, I think, the last round of funding mostly.
Oh, okay. And how would you calculate based on the funding? Like what would be the
Because at that
potential?
point of time, you get a share price and you get a market cap of the
Right,
company. And
right.
that market cap can be divided by the number of shares in the company to arrive at a per share value. A notional per share value obviously doesn't mean that if you go out in the market, you will get that amount, but it gives you a notional value.
So then you have to know how many shares has the company distributed so far, right?
Yes, yes,
Is
yes.
is that something that mostly employees would know in a startup?
It's privileged information, but yes, it's available with people who have shares.
All right. So you basically are then able to sort of understand in the next round of vesting, do I want to buy more shares or not, right? Or do I just want to keep it?
Yeah, I mean, and there are, I mean, as I said, there's a lot of financial consideration as well, because at the time of buying the share, you can be subjected to paying income tax as well on that, right? So it becomes a financial decision, because that can be a large outlay of capital for a share that you don't know is going to sell at what price.
So how does that work? How does your taxation work on something like, I would imagine if you're buying a share for, like, if you're buying three shares every year for, let's say, less than $1,000, how how is it that you end up paying income taxes or
Yeah,
sizable
so
amount
I'll
of taxes
explain
on
this.
that?
So I'll explain that. Explain that. Let's say you were given 10 shares at the beginning of the period. First year vested, you have three shares. Now you have option to exercise these three shares. Now let's say these three shares current value is 2,000 rupees. So
Yeah,
2,000 into three, 6,000 rupees. Uh, Based on that current value, you will have to pay tax to the government,
right.
because the idea is that uh, this is this is a form of compensation for you, right? So you've been given these shares, their current net worth, their current market value is X amount, and you need to pay X amount, taxes on X amount as per your income tax slabs.
Right.
Now there are some government schemes that help you defer this as well. Like there is a specific scheme for ESOP tax deferment, but it is not very easy to sort of just understand how it's going to go. For example, I've not been able to figure it out till now.
Mm.
I've not looked into it too deeply as well, but it's something that it helps you defer your taxes for a certain number of years, over and above the current time frame, right? So the idea is, and why this is risky, is that let's say you bought the shares,
Mm.
but you don't know when you're going to liquidate it,
Mm.
right? Let's say 6,000 rupees, and you say, okay, I'll buy these shares today, I'll pay the tax on 6,000 rupees.
Mm.
But I don't know whether they're going to sell for 12,000 rupees, or they're going to sell for 6,000 rupees, or they're going to sell for 1,000 rupees,
Mm.
right? At the when there is an exit. So
Yeah.
it's a big risk that you're taking, that you're paying tax on something that is a high value, which if it goes down, then you have a financial loss.
You've
And
paid taxes on a asset that has depreciated over time, basically.
yes.
All right. And so is it that you can only sell these stocks when there is an exit, like an IPO or
For
somebody else
all
buys?
practical purposes, yes, IPO, secondary exit, strategic exit, any of those options are there. But but for all practical purposes, yes. I mean, obviously, theoretically, you can sell it at any point of time because you're the holder. But it's very difficult to get an exit uh, without having a structure in place.
So I would imagine that if somebody buys the startup next year, and so they would want to consolidate all the shares, and so they would buy all the existing ESOPs, right?
Huh. I mean, theoretically, that's one possibility. Yes.
And then what happens if there's a IPO? How do you then liquidate all these ESOPs?
Well,
You sell them on the open market?
yeah, that's actually, again, that's it's governed by laws, and it's a little bit more complicated. Again, even I'm not aware of all the mechanics,
Hmm.
but if there's an IPO, then yes, some part of your secondary can be sold as part of the pre and post process.
All right. All right. And so that actually clears up so much about how ESOPs work. So it basically, what I understand is, like you were saying earlier, it's paper money. It's not money in your hand until there is an exit event.
Correct.
Yeah. I think we covered so much. This was such a nice and technical podcast. Is there anything else we should have talked about?
I think I want to go back to our Wayne days and talk a little bit more on our journey. And, I mean, I think it's very interesting that, how, as I mentioned, right, there are 50 people fresh out of college who sort of came in with like literally no other agenda than just having fun and learning, hopefully, as much as possible. So I just want to go over those days a little bit, and maybe if you can talk about your journey as well a little bit, on when you decided to sort of make a switch. What was that trigger for you? And I know that you were up to so many interesting projects even at Bain, and I was always I was always in awe of you, even then, that, how are you taking all of this up while having a steady job? So, just would love to hear more about that as well.
Well, firstly, the admiration is mutual because I worked with you, I think, on a few projects, and I have never felt so intellectually small in front of someone else
But
ever in
please
my
don't say
life.
that. Please don't say that.
No, but it's true. You just it you could feel that, yeah, she is way smarter. She's way smarter than you. She's way smarter than most people in this room, even like some of the managers. And that's why everybody was like, yeah, she is the star analyst of the on the floor. And I just used to sort of I just used to enjoy so much. Like I always feel that you should not be the smartest person in a room. And that's why I always used to love interacting with you because, yeah, I felt like there was so much I could gain from talking to you and learn from you.
Yeah,
Uh,
I actually subscribe to that, and I genuinely feel that never assume that you're the smartest person in the room, because you can only be smart about some things, and there are always going to be things that the other person is smarter than you on those aspects, right? So I mean, I feel like that's for sure. Like, I mean, never assume you're the smartest person in the room, and never, I mean, obviously you're not the smartest person in the room. Nobody is.
yeah, but at the same time, it kind of helps if you have that aura that everybody perceives you as the smartest person in the room, right? That's what everyone saw you as at Bain.
It's burden of expectation as well, right? It comes with that
Yeah, yeah.
that that
Still,
that, that
not a
that
bad
you
spot
can't
to be
make a
in.
mistake.
And I don't think you did. I think after
I
a
hope I
point,
did.
people just kind of said that, yeah, yeah, let her do her stuff. She'll figure it out. Yeah, we have to pay attention to the rest of the screw ups. Yeah. Bain journey, it was very nice. I really enjoyed. We were talking earlier before this. We started recording that. I really feel that the ROI of Bain for me was meeting you, meeting two of our other friends, who we still talk to, on a very regular basis. Um, and just having even Shubham, who was on the podcast earlier,
Yeah, yeah,
just having those kind of friendships and seeing how everybody is succeeding so well in their in a way that they define as success. uh,
correct.
that has been the best part of Bain for me. Just having that close knit group of 4 to 5 friends that have similar mindsets, are entrepreneurial, who want to do things, who want to achieve things. That is something that I always craved and I never got. That's one of the big reasons why I moved to the UK, because I wasn't really getting that in Delhi.
Hmm.
Um, and after a point, I started feeling like, I had learned everything I could at the company that I was working at, the startup.
Makes sense.
And so I felt that, yeah, I would like to, just move to. So I just Googled what are the biggest startup hubs. And I
Hmm.
found that most of them were in the US. And I figured that if I went there, it's such a struggle to, start a company as an immigrant over there. I mean, you could wait 20 years and not get a green card. So I said, what's the next best thing? So the biggest startup hubs outside of the US, London was the biggest one. So
Okay.
that's basically why I came to the UK, because I figured that I'd
That's
come to a deal.
very methodical way of looking at it. I mean, I think
I have
definitely
just
given yourself the right opportunity. Now, obviously time will tell, but very methodical way of looking at it, and also rejecting US for that reason. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if their policies were different, I would have loved to, go and work there, because it's like the mecca of
vibrant.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But um yeah, so I mean, but just coming here has been such a big difference. Like the way people talk about entrepreneurship. My course is innovation and entrepreneurship. It's a
Mhm.
master's in innovation and entrepreneurship. So everybody here has an entrepreneurial mindset. Most people have. Uh, and some people have done entrepreneurial stuff. I know a couple of people that are building their companies while working on this course. So it's such a different energy, and not everybody has things figured out, but the fact is that everybody is thinking in the same direction. And that is what I love about being here,
That's great.
so
That's
much.
great.
And that really has been the guiding light for me, even going back to our Bain days, because everybody, like, Bain is a great place. And everybody, even now, when I, send out a job application, their eyes light up when they hear Bain when I'm talking to them or when they see Bain on the CV. But it was, I just craved the startup environment a little bit more than
Hmm.
I did working at Bain. And so yeah, that, and I also feel like I had done a couple of internships at the startup that I ended up working for when I was in undergrad. And that
Hmm.
kind of ruined things for me because I already had expectations of this is how work should be. But, this is the kind of autonomy and agency I would like. But at Bain, it was way more structured, way more, how consulting works.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that was something that I said at that point, I did not want to optimize for that. I wanted to optimize for, the most high risk thing I could think of, which was literally working for one-fourth the salary, no idea if the company will even work after a year. Um, and so that is why that, and so I said that let me just try it out and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, then, I'd never have this regret in mind that I never tried it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, I could always come back to Bain. They're nice people. Um,
Yeah.
they'll let me back in. But if it does work out, and if I do end up learning something useful, I could that could really put me on a different trajectory, which you would not get working at a big company. It would be much more gradual. That was really my mindset going into on the Bain days. And so, that's why I started, doing side projects. I started learning SEO while I was at Bain. I know that I would keep telling you that, oh, I started this blog, and oh, I started writing so much every single day. I remember I would get up at 4 just to write for a few hours before coming into Bain, coming into work. And then I would go back home. Maybe if I was up to it, I'd write a little bit more. And so I was consistently, trying to get in the reps of
Hmm.
how do blogs work, how does SEO work, trying to master that skill. And that is something that has really that period was really good for me. It was very high pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself,
Hmm.
but I really ended up learning so much in that amount of time. So
I
yeah,
think because it interned before Bain, and you were sort of, you had your ideas about, what work should entail, and at least what the output needs to be. You did end up taking up a lot of projects at Bain, as I said, like with a full-time job. You ended up taking up these projects where I didn't even know that you were waking up at 4 a.m. to write blogs. So I think that experience definitely also sort of made you see it in a way that, this is something that you have to do because you have this expectation from yourself that at least this much I need to get out of it. And
yeah,
in terms of learning, in terms of experience, in terms of whatever, like it doesn't obviously have to be one thing.
yeah, that's true. I mean, and so I've always been thinking, why was it like that? But, I mean, I just couldn't, like, I think you and I are very similar in that way, that if you and I
Yeah.
end up going to a party, we are, mostly sitting in a corner and just chatting by ourselves, but we're never the life of the party,
Yeah.
in most cases. And so I would go like, everybody does. You go to, it's your first job. It's mostly 20 somethings hanging around on the floor. It was a very young office. And so there would be something happening every Friday night. But then eventually I just started despising those outings where, it just felt like everybody was looking forward to Fridays, hating on Mondays,
Hmm.
and I did not want to celebrate that. It just felt icky to me. And I just remember going to a couple of these parties and just sitting there,
Hmm.
staring at my phone or just looking around and not wanting to talk to anyone, because it was like the same old conversations of, oh, I started this project. Oh, my boss, I really don't like them, or I really like them. Uh, office romances also were a thing.
Yeah.
And so, it was just, I just felt like like everything became so two-dimensional. It just, and was in that neat little box. And outside of that environment, there wasn't really anything to explore. And that's why
I
I
think
just
you've summed
started
it
doing.
up. You've summed it up quite well. You summed it up quite well. I mean, I think finding your own place in that just when you're starting out your professional journey is very difficult, especially if you don't want to subscribe to the mold that's expected.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, everybody is different. A lot of people ended up
So,
staying there, loved it
yeah.
for many, many years. But
It just depends on, again, as you said, like your version of success, your version of fun, your version of happiness. It's just
yeah,
about finding that.
yeah. And I also think there's no that you don't need to glorify one or the other. Like people unnecessarily
Exactly. Oh yeah,
glorify this side of
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely not. I mean, you do you. Basically, whatever is making you happy, making you satisfied, that is completely worth doing. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter whether I understand it or not. Doesn't matter, for sure.
yeah. I just but the things I remember the most from Bain are just the four of us hanging out, uh, maybe venting a little bit after work, um, and just chatting away. We used to sit right next to each other, and those were really the best times I had at Bain.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was a great podcast.
I
If
agree.
if people want to reach out to you and just ask you for advice, can they do that?
Yeah, yeah, I don't mind.
Where can they find you?
They can. It's very hard to find me. They can find me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Tanvi Binani.
All right, Tanvi Binani. Don't expect a barrage of requests because,
I think 35 people, out of 35 people, maybe one or two will reach out. I'll take that as a good conversion rate.
maybe I mean, don't wait for it. That's my point.
I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah. But maybe in the next 2 years,
Yeah.
somebody will.
Okay.
That'd be a cool moment for us.
That'll be cool. That'll be cool.
All
I'll,
right.
I'll tie it all back to this podcast, and then we will see how many lives we've changed.